Welcome everyone to another episode of the Virtual Ball Boys podcast. My name is Chris, and I am joined once again by my good friend Matt.
You gotta make it baby. Make it baby.
For anyone who doesn't know the reference, we have a podcast, or specifically Matt hosts a podcast of Dock of Shame. It's a TDI retrospective, Total Drama Island retrospective. And a recurring segment on there is talking about the latest season of the Total Drama franchise. Wait, what was it called again? Total Drama-rama. There you go. And basically one of the things that we've realized is that corporations, for some reason, really love turning things into babies.
They make it baby.
So
they made Mr. Peanut baby.
There you go. That's
what did the Groot thing. They copied Groot. The big one died and became baby.
That's the lore. It's like Mr. Peanut and Groot are from the same family, essentially.
Plant become baby. Plant die become baby.
Wow. It's rough, you know. Are they even gonna have a campaign on Mr. Peanut being a baby?
I want to punt baby Mr. Peanut across the football field.
Or are they gonna just like pretend that none of this ever happened? Because I could totally see Mr. Peanut doing that. And besides, like, they weren't even running commercials, I don't even think, for like anything until the Super Bowl, and then they just fucking killed their mascot and turned it into a baby. So like, what? I don't even know if they would even continue any commercials after this. Like, they're pretty much well off.
Did Geico do the sequels thing in the Super Bowl?
No, I don't think so.
They had shit leading up to it with Joe Buck.
Right.
In like the previews, but not a Super Bowl commercial. What's the point, Geico?
Yeah, that was also a thing. And we'll talk about commercials. I do want to do a deep dive into some of the commercials on the Super Bowl front. But yes, the Geico thing I think was completely forgotten about. I think outside of Joe Buck kind of showing up and the.
But that was pregame. That wasn't Super Bowl at that point.
Yeah, like the stars of those commercials were trying to convince him to vote for them, but then like nothing followed through with that. Like it was strange at the very least.
Yep.
But of course, we're post Super Bowl. It is insane, but we are finally made it to the finish line. And we've had crossed that finish line only a few days ago. With the conclusion of Super Bowl 54, and it's been a wild season and with a wild Super Bowl, and it was luckily, I think it certainly, like, it didn't have the most like exciting finish necessarily, but overall I would say it met the expectations of being an exciting game.
Oh yeah, for sure.
At least I would just throw that out there. I think that's fair to say, but let's talk about the Super Bowl. And it started out, I think, with a very cool. Well, first of all, they had the singers and stuff, and all of them. I think Yolanda Adams did a really great job of "America the Beautiful." Demi Lovato did a great rendition of the Star Spangled Banner, and it was very
anytime the anthem singer hits the under 2 minutes, it's good.
Yes. Was that actually what happened this year? Because I wasn't keeping track.
Yes, it was an under.
All right, so that
It's also usually when they play sing to a recording rather than a live group.
That's what's the tendency. What happens is that when it's recorded or when they practice it, usually it does keep it under. When they freestyle, it's a lot. A lot of people lose money because people bet on that stuff all the time. So. Really great renditions all around, and then the whole thing kicked off. I think my favorite part of at least the early game festivities was that they had been previewing this commercial type thing for NFL 100, where this kid was running a ball somewhere. Like we didn't know what it was. We just kind of saw him running the ball, and like all these stars were showing up the commercial. and it was like a what was it like they had the he went through the construction site of the LA Stadium, the new LA Stadium that was happening. They did
Mardi Gras,
Mardi Gras, Saints, right. They hit like a few different areas of the country. They hit the city. There was a whole city portion of it. And then all of a sudden, like, because this is one of my favorite tricks in the book is when they kind of blend a like whatever like a something that happened in the past, like like Survivor, what they used to do with Survivor.
I was about to bring that up.
Yeah, with Survivor when they
do something pre-recorded that goes to the location that the live event is happening in, so it's like they just came from there,
right?
And are just now reaching it.
Right, like, and they've ruined it in recent years because Jeff Probst wears this, like, muscle-showing black shirt at almost every single finale now. That does not actually, like, it doesn't fit his outfit. But whatever, this is just a minor tweak. But no, like, all of a sudden, like, the kid comes running out of the stadium with a bunch of kids following him. And that he was delivering the game ball to the head ref. And it was a really, really neat, cool thing to start out everything. And then the game started. And what did you think about, like, the first half of action? Like, before anything really happened, what was, like, your first takeaways from the game?
It was a surprisingly defensive game. That's what happens when you're the Chiefs and only score 10 points and a half, or even the 49ers. Like, the 10 points and a half is not what you expect, I think, from either team.
Right.
But overall, it felt close, and the first half it definitely felt like, I think because the Chiefs only scored 10 points, that the 49ers were very in control of the game for the first half.
I would agree. That's how I kind of felt. And like even though it was tied, it did really have the feeling of like the Niners had all the like quote unquote momentum. Of the going in. I mean, and it was cool because it started out two really neat touchdown drives were kind of like the showcase of the first half, where the Chiefs finished everything off with a really cool spin move. Everyone spun, and then Patrick Mahomes got the ball and basically ran it in for a touchdown. That was pretty neat. And then
that was an homage to a very old Rose Bowl play.
Yes. I forget what the specifics of that was.
I think it was 1948 Michigan doing the play.
Ooh, there you go. Got some getting that. I had no idea what the actual reference was, but I like it. I like that they pulled in that kind of stuff. And then and then in the second quarter, it was the fullback Kyle Juszczyk scoring, the former Raven, going in and scoring that touchdown. To basically tie the game at that point was a really, really awesome play. Another element of the first half, kind of late in the second quarter, George Kittle made a big play that set the Niners up to potentially take the lead, but he was called for offensive pass interference. What did you I don't know. Like I feel like it was a good call, but what do you think?
I think it's fine, but I mean, of course, it's a pass interference call. Mm-hmm. First off,
yes.
But I think it was fine. It sucked, like especially obviously for Kittle and the 49ers. Mm-hmm. But I don't think it was a bad call necessarily.
I
don't know.
I guess in the context of the Vikings, what happened to the Vikings in the Viking Saints game earlier in the playoffs, like that, in retrospect, like it kind of looked like, if you look at the two plays, like Kyle Rudolph looked like he pushed off a lot more than George Kittle, and Kyle Rudolph did not get the penalty, but we've kind of said that before, where it did feel like the penalty should have been called there, but it ended up not working out. But it was very weird because someone brought up too that Bill Vinovich, who was the head ref, and we've talked about how he was the guy from last year's NFC Championship game. His crew, for whatever reason, does not call a lot of penalties.
Okay.
So that's maybe part of the reason what happened last year. But that's also what made this play so weird, was that all of a sudden they would call a penalty on this. Like, usually he lets them play, but for some reason he called a penalty on this situation. But again, like, if you look at it, you can make a solid argument that's pass interference. So, but I also don't think it had a major impact of how the half happened. But there was a whole second half to go, and
there was a whole second half, and there was another thing that definitely affected the 49ers more, which was the whole, like, Shanahan not using the timeout.
Yes,
that everyone criticized.
yeah, that was another element of it, was that, like, as they get the ball, they were essentially going to be the last team with the ball in the second quarter, and yeah, he didn't call a timeout at all. He was letting the clock run, and I think after the game he was saying his strategy was to make sure that the Chiefs didn't get the ball back, and that, like, they would be able to run out the clock. But I think that he was overthinking it a little bit, because if you're trying to take away time for the Chiefs, but you're not leaving enough time on the clock for yourselves to score, because you don't know whether or not you're going to be able to score, and that could have been very huge in that situation.
Yeah. But again, you had a whole second half to figure shit out.
Exactly. Yeah.
So neither of those were game ending. You also had a 10-point lead, 20-10 lead at one point.
Yes, we'll talk about that in a second. Let's talk halftime. What did you think of the halftime show?
Loved it.
Yes. Why?
Absolutely loved it.
What did you love about it?
Dancing was great. Music was great. It wasn't completely over the top like Katy Perry's was.
And absurd.
It was enjoyable, unlike Maroon 5.
Yes.
You didn't want to punch the person singing like Justin Timberlake.
Yeah.
That's a little mean, but
I know. I think a lot of people feel that way, so it's okay.
Yep. Yeah, it was great. I loved that they each got their own thing to do. Like, started out with Shakira. Shakira had, like, a solid bit of time. J-Lo had a solid bit of time, and then Shakira came in at, like, the end of one of J-Lo's things playing drums, and then they both, like, did stuff together at the very end.
Yeah, I love how I loved how very, you know, multicultural it was as a whole, because they were implementing a lot of different things. A lot of people are making fun of the whole what Shakira did with her tongue, but apparently that's actually like a call or some sort of celebratory noise.
Celebration call. Let me look up.
Yeah, I want to
what it's called.
I always screw up, but it was something of in like Arabic culture that people use as a kind of like a celebratory party type thing. I definitely look it up for more specifics, but I loved it. I think
I'm probably pronouncing this wrong. Zegrata.
Okay.
Yeah, celebration. It's used for like celebration in Arabic cultures, and Shakira is half Lebanese.
Oh, there you go. It works out.
Yep.
Yeah, I think, you know, I didn't realize how many bops that Jennifer Lopez ended up having. Like, I did not, for whatever reason, I forgot all the songs that Jennifer Lopez sang. I always I completely detached her from a lot of her hits, and I'm just like, oh, that's her thing. Like, I had no idea. Like, I forgot. Shakira, I knew a lot more of, like, what Shakira was, but, like, Jennifer Lopez, I was just like, oh, whoa, that's insane.
And this is a personal thing. I love Shakira's voice.
I do too.
It's so, like, it's so characteristic, like, of her, and very distinguishable from a lot of other voices.
Yeah, I think that it was really cool kind of having. I love the double headliner thing. I loved kind of like the balance of the two, even though they're both Latina, and they're both you know, they both have, like, are in the pop kind of Latina pop scene. I did feel like there was a difference between the two shows a little bit. I kind of liked having that balance of energy. Like, I would be down for another Super Bowl that had a double headliner type thing.
Yeah, me too.
You know, like, I would be down for that. One thing that came out, because you knew, because just people are like this. People were very like up in arms about how sensual the whole halftime show was. And
Adam Levine took his shirt off last year. No one cared, and just in like protest of them and in support, I'm gonna do the rest of this podcast with my shirt off.
Oh, all right. Well, then I respect that. I will not body shame you. I hear the shirt actually hitting the ground. No, I respect the hell out of that. No, I completely understand. I just love that some people were making fun of it the way they were. And I just want to point out a tweet by Pete Blackburn because it made my night, where he added the NFL, and then he wrote all lowercase, "My son just humped a hole into our sectional couch. I hope you're happy." I was just like, yes, just because it's totally, it's just making fun of the parents that are just so like, oh my god, how dare, but like, it's just how it is, and it was a lot of fun to watch. I enjoyed it. I thought, like you said, I think the choreography was great, and I think it's one of those Super Bowls like that. That's how you do it. You don't have to do anything so extreme and out there. Just do you. And I
Right.
felt like the artists, they really embraced what they do best, and like Jennifer Lopez just came off of a Las Vegas show. Like she just embraced what she did with the Las Vegas and brought it to this, and I thought it worked out. So kudos to them. Really excellent job. One of our better halftime shows that we've had in a long time.
Yeah, totally.
On that front.
I am gonna put my shirt back on because it's cold down here.
Okay. Sounds good. I'll stall for you in a second. Now we move on to the second half. And at this point, I'll be completely real. I picked the Chiefs to win, but I was really trying to say to myself, I like the Niners. I like the story of the Niners. I want to, and I really, I don't care who wins. It was at this point though that in my mind I was just like, you know what, fuck it, I'm rooting for the Chiefs all the way, because I realized that I knew that they were going to be in a rough spot at some point in this game, and I was just like, I want to root for this team because they've been through so much over 50 years. There's so many guys on here that like it's so hard not to root for. It's just like I had to like really embrace it in the second half, but then my heart started getting broken in the third quarter because the Niners come out and they just bounce right out to a 20-10 lead. And that was thanks to two interceptions, thanks to one interception that ended up leading to 6. And that was Raheem Mostert running in for the touchdown. He had a monster game as well.
Oh, he did.
Very much, it's forgetting considering everything else that happened. But and Robbie Gould coming through as well, second field goal of the night for him. So they just bounced out to the 2010 lead, and at this point, like, did you have? I think I did. Did you have doubts that the Chiefs were basically done after the third quarter? Did you think that it was gonna be hard for them to come back?
I see. That's hard to say.
Okay.
In the sense of what the 49ers were doing, I thought that, okay, the 49ers have control of this game. They can take it to the end. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it was the Chiefs, and they had come back in the past 2 playoff games to win.
Yeah.
So I knew, like, I wasn't letting myself, like, have the feeling of it's over.
I think I was. And I think it was just because of the emotional investment I started to put myself into it. And I think I was like, but I like at the same time, like vocally, I was like, it's the Chiefs. You can't count the Chiefs. But like in my mind, I was just like, oh fuck. And I was like, it's like you don't know, especially after the second interception, because, and by the way, like Mahomes, he just didn't have a good game for at least for 3 quarters, and he was off on a lot of his throws, and I would say at least one, if not both of the interceptions were his fault. Like usually it's like maybe like the receivers or not, but like he had some bad throws overall, and it really cost him a lot. It cost the team a lot in that situation.
I made a joke to my of course, Bears fan family, that Mahomes was playing like Trubisky in a lot of this game.
Yeah, it was true because that's I mean because
maybe
yeah. Go
maybe
ahead.
I was just salty of all the comparisons of like, oh, Bears should have drafted Mahomes, but that's another thing that when we get to the Bears, talking about the Bears later, that I'll talk about that.
Yeah, I completely understand because like especially this is the first time that Patrick Mahomes. I mean, not that he hasn't been in the face of all major NFL fans, for the last 2 years or so, but for there a lot of the country was watching during the Super Bowl, and this was kind of like their first look at him, kind of, in the Super Bowl, and like for him to perform the way he did. I could see a lot of people walking away from this game being like, "Man, that guy's fucking overrated." Like, because it's the way that he played in those first 3 quarters. But that was the first 3 quarters. We move into the fourth, and things just change. And it's not even until like what is
the
it?
last 6 minutes.
Yeah, like last 7 or 8 minutes or so of the game in the game that things really start turning around. After the interception, the second interception, the Chiefs were able to hold San Francisco to a punt. And then Mahomes, basically what sparked the comeback was a 44-yard throw to Tyreek Hill, which was a beautiful throw. It was the best throw of the night for Patrick Mahomes. And it's not going to be focused on as much because it's not a scoring play, but it literally kicked off what was one of the best comebacks in Super Bowl history. Obviously, I know we have other contexts for better comebacks, but it is quite literally in the top 5 because it's tied with like 4 other teams that have come back from 10 points before. So they score the touchdown, and even that's controversial, right? Because David Williams looks like he's crossing the plane with the ball, and it doesn't, like, we don't know. There's not like a good angle on this. It looks like it was weird. It was a weird play. I think.
I think it was a not enough to overturn thing.
Yeah.
But also, if he didn't get in there, it would have been like 1st and goal, right, on the yard line.
Or
was that a
no?
A third down
you know what? I think that was a third down.
Okay.
I think it's been a few days, so I could be very wrong on that. But I think there was some sort of significance to that play that, like, when it happened, like, there was like, all right, well, is he gonna, if it is the next play, like, that didn't get a touchdown, will he go for it? Like, I think there were some situations with that.
Gotcha.
But
it still felt like a not enough to overturn.
Exactly, deal. And I think they made the right call, but shame on Fox, man. Get a better camera down the sideline on the Super Bowl. You have like 500 cameras at the Super Bowl.
Jeez.
Get it work it out, man. And then they go through that, and it's 2017, and they stop San Francisco again, 3 and out, and then easily they march down in 2 minutes time and score another touchdown. This time, that was the Damian Williams touchdown. The other one was the Travis Kelce one. I apologize. I got those mixed up. Right. But yes, the Travis Kelce one was first, and this one was the Damian Williams one, and I think that was the other thing. That's why it was a big deal, because they were about to take the lead.
About to have the lead.
Yeah. And so, what were your emotions at this point? Just out of curious, what's this happening?
It was like, well, I kind of saw this happening. I was like getting into it a little bit more. I was like, oh, this is actually going to be a good game again.
Yeah,
it's totally what the Chiefs do, but I still had like some faith in what the 49ers could do.
Right. I always kind of like. It was at that point where I was just like, okay, that's why I like really got all in. I was just like, oh my god, the Chiefs actually did it. They came back. But now, what is going to happen with this Niners team? And then they start to play again. The Niners have the ball again, rather. And Garoppolo just starts not really hitting his targets well. The pass rush for the Chiefs is really picking up. And it ended up just falling apart in like a minute. It says here a minute 19 seconds was their drive after 7 plays, and like the last play of that drive was Garoppolo basically trying to shovel pass it to someone but like he had like 3 or 4 Chiefs on him as he was trying to shovel pass. It was like very sad. It reminded me of like Mufasa being pushed off the cliff, like just being consumed by Chiefs, and as the ball was trying to fly in the air and just did not land, and the Chiefs took over on downs, and they were like, holy crap. And then all they needed was a first down, and then Damian Williams again for 38 yards just runs down the sideline, no one's stopping him, and they score. It's 31-20.
That just sealed it.
Yeah, definitely. It was that.
Absolutely. Obviously, it was a 2-score game after that, so definitely sealed it with how little time was left.
Right.
But even so, like, the Chiefs had control of the game at that point.
Exactly. And the last 2 drives was the San Francisco 49ers trying to do something, ended with an interception by Kendall Fuller, who, didn't we discuss last week, was the guy that they got in the Alex Smith trade.
Yep.
So how ironic was the guy that trade that basically signified the start of the Patrick Mahomes era, the guy they got was the one that closed out the Super Bowl for them, and then
exactly
it was all kneeling down from there, and the Kansas City Chiefs and all of Chiefs Kingdom got confetti rained on them as they've won Super Bowl 54 in just an absolute, there's an awesome game. And Patrick Mahomes was named the MVP. I would make the argument that it was Damian Williams, but
absolutely should have been Damian Williams.
I digress.
But it's quarterback star power and it's Mahomes star power.
Exactly.
It should have been Damian Williams.
It's why Eli Manning was an MVP, Super Bowl MVP twice. That's just how it ends up.
Shouldn't have. Nope.
No.
Disagree.
No, I definitely disagree. But you know what? Regardless,
I reject your reality and substitute my own.
That's okay. Yes, I think that our reality is the true reality anyway.
That's a MythBusters quote.
Is it really? I have not seen MythBusters. I think once in my life. I've seen maybe like snippets. It
was a good show. Adam Savage is a really cool dude.
Oh, all right. Is it still on?
Different iterations I think are, but like the original show has ended.
Okay. And yeah, so Kansas City won, and I couldn't help but think about like some of the famous fans that have won, especially Eric Stonestreet. I think I multiple times I kept on seeing him during Super Bowl week and how excited and how nervous he was. Like, he's one of the biggest Kansas City fans because he memorizes like the rosters of the 80s of the Chiefs, where the Chiefs were not nearly as relevant and stuff. And I felt so happy for him. But of course, the players as well, I felt good about. But no one did I feel better about winning the Super Bowl than Andy Reid, a guy that for 20 years has been a head coach in the league, very well respected in the league, and time again, failed to get over the hump. No matter how many times the Eagles and Chiefs were in the playoffs, failed to get over the hump, and he finally, with a quarterback that could really do magical things, he finally got there, and he finally got his ring. And I got choked up because the Philadelphia Eagles tweeted out right after the Super Bowl win, "Time's yours, Andy," with a picture of him. And that's how respected the guy is. A team that fired him, fucking, like, I mean, I know he's a legendary coach for the Eagles, but they got rid of him, and they still tweeted out their love for him. Like, this is, it's so good, and I'm so happy for him that he got it finally, and that's something that can go off his shoulders. And after the game, he didn't seem fazed by it, and neither did Patrick Mahomes. They were ready for number 2 already.
Yeah.
That's the kind of the wild thing about it, is that they just or both just seemed like they're ready to go for the next one. They're ready to go for next season after everything that they went through. But I'm so happy for both of them. Happy for Damian Williams, who came back he was in Miami for so many years, and got to go to Miami and win it all. And Tyrann Mathieu, who's been a great player for so many years, he gets a Super Bowl as well. And there's so many more that you can name. We don't have to get back into that, but just what an incredible run for this Chiefs team. All 3 games they came back from 10 points down.
And all 3 games they won by at least 10 points.
Just insane. It's insane.
It is.
One of the most,
this is an anomaly of a team. It feels like.
It's one of those, it's like we always, obviously our brand is Team Chaos, but to me it's like a different type of Team Chaos, because like obviously the Chiefs, after the Ravens got knocked out, they're pretty much like the favorite in the AFC to make it all the way, and to potentially win it all as well. They were the favorite in this game, but they were the kind of chaos where they created in-game chaos instead of just like contextual chaos, where they literally put themselves in situations, especially a 24 point deficit in the first round of the playoffs for them. It basically making us all like dread the fact that the Titans are going to be going to Houston for the AFC Championship game.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, they come back. And it's the magic of Mahomes, and the defense deserves a ton of credit too. We got people who didn't really buy into this defense, but they started even though they always started slow in these games, they always finished strong, and they just showed it time and time and time again. So just kudos to them, kudos to the Chiefs, and I know that the 49ers are hurting, and this sucks, and you want to say that they'll make it back, but you just don't know.
You never know, especially with the NFC.
But
the NFC is never normal. It's never consistent.
Yeah, we haven't had a back-to-back NFC champion since the Seahawks.
Yeah, and that feels like so long ago.
It's 2014. That was now 5 seasons ago at least. So but I also think, it's fair to say, though, you look at the roster of the Niners, they don't have a ton of free agents. They have a great shot next year, and they'll be very, very tough to beat again, because they also have all their coaching staff coming back as well. So, you can't doubt this team, and it's like we've gotten to the point where we can respect the Niners again and know that they're going to be a contender next year. I don't see this team falling off. But like you said, who knows?
Yeah, I. Then again, we didn't think that would happen with the Rams.
Right. Exactly.
You just don't know. And the NFC is fickle. It shifts around. Power dynamics move around everywhere. We had the Patriots be in the AFC Championship for the past 10 years. They weren't this year, but now this is the Chiefs' second year in it. So is this another streak that's starting for the AFC?
Yeah.
It's possible.
It very well could be. And the only counter argument I would give to that is that I think that there is more competition for Kansas City in this conference to maybe not have them get to a dynasty type period, but they might. Who knows? Anything can happen. And that would be the last thing I want to see happen, because I like this Kansas City team. I don't want to see a dynasty be formed, but it happens in these sports all the time.
Yep.
And one last thing on the Super Bowl. What name? Do you have any commercials that you feel like worth pointing out outside of Baby Peanut?
Baby. The one that caught me most off guard was the first Tide commercial, where he showed up in the Masked Singer ad immediately after. That really got me. At that point, I was expecting it, though, so it became less funny as it went on.
Of course, yeah.
But that first one was great. The fucking Reese's commercial.
Yes.
Was my favorite one of the night.
that was I think the one commercial I did not look up for in time to really understand the joke, but I once I saw it again I got it, and it was really funny. The basically the visualizations of all this. What are you, stuck under a rock? And the one at the very end, which they did not even need to say, we all knew.
Yep.
Jason Momoa, I thought that was a good one.
That was good too.
That was the Rocket Mortgage one.
Strong start.
Where he basically just removes himself limb for limb.
Also, you know what?
Skinny.
I was kind of right this year about companies like working together on commercials.
Yeah, right?
Because Tide had the "Is it later now?" during the Bud Light commercial.
Yeah, it was Tide. Yeah, Tide for the Bud Light commercial. They tied, and then they had a whole cleaning commercial where I think it was a bunch of brands under one like giant brand, because we live in an era of
that was PG like is just the conglomerate. They own all those properties.
We have monopolies. Brands. That was the word for it.
Yeah. It's like Johnson & Johnson except not.
Yeah, and
then SC Johnson.
And then speaking of going back to the peanut one, they had Mr. Kool-Aid Man there, which I guess was I guess they're under the same umbrella. Like I don't know. I
don't know. I don't know what that one is.
But yes, you were right though. There was a lot of collaboration this year. Definitely.
Yeah.
And I think the one tearjerker commercial was I'm gonna forget her name. Loretta. Google's commercial.
Oh, the Google one. Yeah.
Yeah, where he was basically saying like, look up. Picture Loretta, and remember how Loretta always hated my mustache, and it was all these different things, and I found it very poignant because I didn't notice it at the time, but after I found the commercial again and watched it to the end, I found it very poignant that the very last thing was where she said, I'm gonna forget what she specifically said, but it was like don't spend too much time thinking about me or something like that, or don't act alone or whatever. And like you hear him go out of the house with the dog, and you're like, oh man, like he at least has someone in his life still. It was very very emotional. So I give kudos to Google on that. Like that was definitely a good tearjerker. I thought the TurboTax commercial was the dumbest of the night.
Remind me what that one
was the one where they all were just shaking their legs.
Okay, yeah. It was like the weird, everyone's dancing, everyone can do their taxes.
Yeah. Yeah, like
deal.
Yeah, there was like there's companies that just like going for the random and they don't have a point, and that was kind of like one of those. Where I was like,
that wasn't a very good commercial. Yeah. I couldn't really get into it.
No. No. I just ignoring you now. Putting you ignore. So that's that. I think that covers. There's a lot. I think there's a good year for commercials overall. I didn't think it was a terrible year. Some good ones here and there. So the next thing, we turn the page now, and we move into the off season, and we have a lot of off season. There's a lot happens. A lot of perceptions of teams kind of change within a period that does not have any football being played outside of the XFL. And
this is not becoming an XFL podcast, by the way.
Come on, you're ruining a segment I would have definitely had on the XFL, recapping all the games. We're picking. We're gonna next podcast we have. We're picking at XFL games. Even though it started next week, we'll save it out for now. So the thing that we started during the Pro Bowl week when it was kind of down. We talked about 16 teams, 16 of the bomb teams, and so now we're gonna talk about the 16 of the best teams, the remaining 16, the other half of the teams. Kind of recapping their season and looking forward as well.
Yep. The remainder of the team, all the teams that we'll be talking about today, have an 8-8 record or better.
Okay. Yeah. So there you go. Also the draft, the Wikipedia page for the draft has now updated where they no longer have the teams all the way on the left. they now put them on the side, almost like because of the trades and stuff. So just note that after we talk about the Cowboys, we're not talking about the Dolphins again. That's not what we're doing. We're talking about Pittsburgh. So you get started, so that way literally the next team after that you get to talk about is the Bears. So you get started on that.
Okay. So the Cowboys had a interesting season and almost made the playoffs because their division was so horrid. This team was very back and forth on like home road, whether they were facing top defense, bottom defense. It was very literally middle of the road for the Cowboys that ended in the firing of Jason Garrett. Chris, this team lost to the Jets this season.
Yes, indeedy.
I just want to point that out. I mean, the Jets still finished with 7-9, which still blows my mind.
They lost to the Jets in the period of time where the Jets were really bad this season.
Yes. And the Dak Prescott had a pretty good year. And the season started with the whole Zeke contract holdout that ended up getting resolved, and then Zeke did not play like the best running back in the league. He played well.
Yeah.
But not the best like everyone thought he should have been.
Right.
And then they had some issues on defense, and it wasn't enough of a performance to keep Jason Garrett around. He's gone. They have free agent stuff to deal with Dak and Amari Cooper. Mm-hmm. They're probably using the franchise tag on Dak, which could lead to another holdout, which if your quarterback is holding out, that's a big problem, Jerry.
Yeah, not good.
Going further, they have a new head coach. I don't know if this is going to be a rebuild for them. If it is, then maybe let Dak walk. But if they still want to like win now, even with a first-year head coach, they got to get that quarterback deal done.
Yeah, I think I think that what Jerry wanted was a guy that's wanting to win now, because that's why they got Mike McCarthy, because they feel like he's going to be a guy that will just put them onto the next level, would bring them to the Super Bowl because he's done so in the past. Yeah, I mean, I think if I'm the Cowboys, I prioritize Dak Prescott, hands down. Get the quarterback locked up. I really don't see a scenario where you don't do that. I mean, again, if they can't do a long-term deal, they would at least do a franchise tag.
And even beyond Dak, there are so many other players, like key players to both sides of the ball, who their contracts are done this year.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of deals that need to be done, or some trades being made. Something, Dallas. Otherwise, your team is going to implode because of all this contract stuff.
Yeah. Well, Amari Cooper, I think, is out the door because he was not used as much down the stretch. I wouldn't. I would not prioritize him in any way. You don't need to. You have a great young threat in Michael Gallup. Maybe you re-sign Randall Cobb. I don't know.
Randall Cobb does have history with McCarthy, so
yeah. Like I think that's reasonable, but like Amari Cooper's gonna look for big bucks, and I don't think you do it unless he's willing to take a massive pay cut.
Nor does he deserve it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your Jason Witten's a free agent. Most likely, I've heard rumors that he might go to the Giants. I don't know for sure about that, but that's a shit. There is a possibility of that happening. Byron Jones, your cornerback, also heading to the market. Sean Lee, who has been basically kind of just weeded out of their defense because of Van Der Esch and Jalen Smith. So, that's not going to be as much of a loss. But Byron Jones, I've heard they're basically fine with having him walk away, which means they're going to have a need a cornerback to fulfill as well. So, yeah, it is going to be a big offseason for them because they are a team that is supposedly going to be built to try to win this year. And they're going to need to do it. I mean, it has been so back and forth with the Cowboys over the Jason Garrett years, at least since I've really started watching, because it literally was where one season they're in, next season they're out. One season they're in, Next season they're out, and it was just this.
And
they're consistent at being inconsistent.
except for that one number 1 seed year,
Right.
it really has been like, oh, they eked in because the NFC East has sucked ass.
Right. It's true. And it is. It's kind of. It's just. It's tough to kind of. See. Will there be a massive improvement with this team right now? It's just. It's too early to tell. I mean, I think though that we've said time again this past season where people have felt, and I felt, that this Cowboys roster was one of the most talented, if not the most talented, in the league, and then they laid an egg like they did this past year. So, they could go into it thinking that they're going to have a great roster, that they're going to win now, and it might not work out. But it's definitely that's the approach to this Cowboys season, and I don't think it's not going to take much for them to put themselves over the edge over the Eagles potentially. We'll have to see how the Eagles do, but. They're there. I think they're on the fringe of breaking through. Super Bowl bound though. I'll wait and see on that.
Definitely not.
Definitely not. Next up, the Pittsburgh Steelers. What a year! Just talk about one of the more interesting teams who did not make the playoffs. Just. They were relevant every single week just because of the fact that their storylines with their backup quarterbacks was just so fascinating. Now, Ben Roethlisberger went down early on in the season, and we were introduced really to Mason Rudolph and to see if he was going to be good. He was not. And then we had Devlin Hodges show up for a little bit, and he had his moments in the beginning, seemed like he could be legit. Then he failed.
Then he wasn't.
Then he
then
failed.
He wasn't good.
Then he wasn't good anymore. Mr. Duck Hodges. But the big thing about this roster was their defense. They had one of the best defenses in the league all season long, and it was one of the things that kind of kept them in games because their quarterback was a handicap at this point, so they really had to have the defense be a major aspect of it. And this was their first year without Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown. The three Bs were completely knocked off on the field, whether it was their injury, free agency, or just absolute catastrophe off the field nonsense. That was the first time that all three of them were off the field. And so it's very weird watching this team try to compete without those big names, but they found a way to do it. Connor was injured at times, but he pulled through and had a few nice games. Juju Smith-Schuster didn't have a breakout year necessarily, but did what he could as much as he could. But really the defense is the story with TJ Watt having a career year, a young player that's going to be really successful for them for years to come. And, it's going to be a weird off season for them because
for sure
they need to figure out a better backup quarterback situation. They basically were exposed this season of not having a stable one. And they're going to need to figure that out. And they're gonna need to build up on a little bit more help on, I think, at least I think in the receiving end, because Juju Smith-Schuster is great, but you don't have a number 2, number 3 wide receiver there to really help you out.
No,
and that's going to be a big deal. But
if
I don't know.
You just think about if Ben wasn't injured this season, and you actually had competent quarterback throwing to. Obviously, a lot of the offense was injured with Connor and Juju, and even Vance McDonald at some points not performing at potential. Mm-hmm. With how good the defense was, and then a bottom line more competent offense.
Yeah.
How good this team could have been.
Yeah.
Is just a big question mark. How differently the team maybe would have been run. Maybe they don't make the Minkah Fitzpatrick trade, but they did.
Yeah.
Maybe they do anyway, just because the Dolphins were unloading everybody. But
well, no. Well, I mean, even with that said, I think that the Minka Fitzpatrick trade was very smart on their part, and it's worked. It's gonna work out for them. I actually completely forgot about him for a second. Yeah, he was a massive aspect of this defense and what kind of reinvigorated them. That's kind of around the time where the Steelers started winning again and had that long stretch where they were consistently winning games this past season. So yeah, I mean, I would not. Obviously the Ravens are going to be a tough team to knock off the top of the division, but I think the Steelers are going to be your team that is going to be like right up against them right now. I could see where if they do a good enough building a nice core around Ben Roethlisberger, who's I'm not always the biggest Ben Roethlisberger fan, but he has played pretty well when he needs to, and I think that he's going to have I think that he could have a really good year if he's protected and doesn't go down. So I have faith that the Steelers team is going to do well. They just need to have a pretty decent offseason. And Tomlin's still on the hot seat. So even though he had a great year as a coach, he is still on the hot seat. So they need to really bounce back this year. All right, next up.
Next up, the Chicago Bears. This was, other than the Rams, probably the most disappointing team this year. Maybe the Browns. But it's jokes on everyone else for getting their hopes up about the Browns.
Yeah.
The Bears came in and did not play very well at all. Started 3-1, which wasn't too bad, but then actually had opponents to face. And it all went downhill from there. Ended up 8-8, which seems false. Like, it doesn't feel like an 8-8 season. The biggest thing in Chicago was, the two biggest things in Chicago were Trubisky and the comparisons to Mahomes and Watson, and Matt Nagy, who suddenly forgot how to do play calls, like as good as he did last year. So there's going to be some growing pains going into next season on whether or not the Bears can return to their 2018 form. I really hope that they can, obviously, because I'm a Bears fan, but you have so much potential here. You have enough on the offense. Well, maybe not. But, you have a great receiver in Allen Robinson. The offensive line needs a revamp. A big question mark what they're going to do at running back, because their rookie didn't pan out very well at all. And that could be him being a rookie, or could be the offensive line. Either one just didn't work out. And Trubisky struggled a lot this year.
Yeah.
They're going into next year with a new OC and a new and John DeFilippo is the quarterback's coach. We'll see how that works out. Didn't work well as a coordinator, but quarterback's coach was kind of where he had his thing. So maybe he'll improve Trubisky. It's going to be a big question mark the next season what happens with that. And with the defense, Khalil Mack was not the powerhouse that he was in 2018. But offensive lines were scheming around him more, and the defense in general, because the offense sucked, was just on the field more, so they kept getting tired out, so they didn't play as well as they did. It was a mess. I don't know what the future of the Bears is. I don't know what the Bears are going to do next year.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I've lived the Bears this entire season, and I don't know what the future is, and that kind of scares me.
Yeah, I mean, definitely could understand being nervous, and I do, I don't know. I look at the defense. They played well. They played better down the stretch. I think that's what helped them, get to 500, was that they were starting to pick things up on that front and played a lot better. And Trubisky had a few games where he did, do well enough where he was not, just flubbing a lot of these throws. And I mean, you look at what their free agency situation is, and there is not a lot of free agents. You do have Dave Trevathan going to free agency. That's a pretty big one. And you have a few guys in the secondary, but not no one like Eddie Jackson or Kyle Fuller. You have those guys locked up. You know, I think it was just a down year for a lot of these players. I don't see the defense being, I think I can still see the defense doing well. I still have faith in, Chuck Pagano being the guy leading that defense. It is going to be the offense that's the question. I think this team is committed to Trubisky. We've heard that from franchises before, and we have actually heard it from this franchise before, where they're like, Mike Glenn's the guy, and then they draft Trubisky. So, not that,
I don't think they're drafting a quarterback.
I that would make sense, and I would think that, again, especially this general manager probably wants to not give up on the guy that he traded up a pick for. I think that they do want to live by that, but I also just think that we've also sat here again with Josh Rosen being the quarterback for the Cardinals, and then him being shipped to Miami. And we were like, yeah. What? How the hell did that happen? I just think anything is possible. But if they don't do anything at quarterback and they're going to rely on Trubisky, I think it is going to be much of a look at what the running back situation is and what the offensive lineman situation is. That's going to be the two that I think is going to be the most looked at.
Offensive line is my biggest need.
Yeah, that I think that's going to be the focus.
All right, last thing I want to say.
Yep.
Everyone giving shit about Trubisky being drafted over Mahomes and Watson. That's just been the narrative all season, especially with Mahomes and Watson balling out. I get it. Mahomes and Watson are more talented than Trubisky. Naturally talented, take the team situation out of it. Yes. But I'm going to use Mahomes in particular. Mahomes was on Kansas City, a very offensive team with a very good offensive coach. That takes his talent and brings it up to a higher level, this lights out level of player. Patrick Mahomes would not be that type of quarterback for John Fox year one during his rookie year.
Yeah.
He would not have been this good because the team was different. The coach sucked ass. And I'm not saying I'm not trying to defend Trubisky. I'm just saying situations are different. You don't know what would have happened. You can't say, should have had Mahomes. You don't know how it would have gone.
Right.
Mahomes could have sucked because the offense sucked year one, and then it'd be the same kind of deal.
Right.
Context matters. Always.
The only counter I would say to that, and, right, I mean, I think Trubisky was the highest quarterback on a lot of people's boards, so, I mean, I think that there was maybe, one guy that had, maybe Patrick Mahomes ahead of him, or Deshaun Watson ahead of him. There was also the Deshaun Kaiser at one point, which poor Browns had to deal with that. But I don't know. I also think about what some people were saying coming out of the draft about Trubisky, and there's, I mean, I always didn't always feel very good about that pick, if I'm being completely honest. I got, there was because there was just a part of me that was I saw what Deshaun Watson did in college, and I always just kind of looked at him and thought that he was going to be. I don't think anyone, with maybe an exception of one or two people, really thought that Mahomes was going to be Mahomes. But Watson is another story because he was the guy in college football for at least 2 years, and he played so well. I was kind of stunned to kind of see him be the third quarterback taken instead of higher up, and he's played well through his first few years. That I don't know. I guess I just still have a problem with the fact that they didn't take him over Trubisky, but I get it. Trubisky was kind of the guy that people were looking at, coming into the draft. So it's tough. It's a tough situation. We'll see how that plays out. The Rams.
I'm gonna not talk about the Bears the rest of the podcast.
Okay, sounds good. The Rams. The last team that was not in the playoffs that we have to talk about. This, I mean, it's kind of surreal to think. Yeah, I mean, like we talked about earlier, we did not think the Rams would not. I mean, we thought they would at least be in it still, but we did not think that this team would be completely out of the playoffs. But that's what happens when you have a downgrade in in offensive production with Todd Gurley not being the player that he was, and Jared Goff not playing at the level that he was at. And the offensive line certainly not playing well after a few of those guys went away. And I think that it also hurt them that they had two of the best teams in the NFC last year when it was the healthy Seahawks team, and of course the 49ers. That certainly did not help the fact that they had the year that they did. I mean, look, they still went 10-6. They still had, or sorry, 9-7 rather, but they still had a winning record when it was all said and done. And that's one thing that they can hang their hat on, but they still decide that they're gonna go with some changes. And Wade Phillips is no longer the defensive coordinator. They parted ways with him, and then that they've also got rid of their offensive coordinator, who I don't even remember the name of because really Sean McVay is the offensive coordinator, but whatever. They retooled the coaching staff a little bit, and I'm sure that there's going to be some changes to the offense because they have to. They need to kind of rebrand themselves a little bit here.
They need to fix that line.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another team that like offensive line is so important. They don't get the glory, but they're so important.
Yeah, no, they are. The cliche is that the game is won in the trenches, but it's kind of true. And they do have some great defensive players on the team. I mean, they got Jalen Ramsey now at quarterback, and of course they have Aaron Donald. Their defense was not really the weakness last year, which was part of the reason why I was kind of surprised that they got rid of Wade Phillips, but whatever, I guess. I mean, he ended up, after going to the Super Bowl with the Broncos, the year later he was out as defensive coordinator, and then the Rams got him. So, these things kind of just, they happen, and I feel bad for Wade. So we'll see if they do anything more for defense. I'm sure they will, but I think the emphasis is going to be figuring out what didn't work on offense, and let's not be surprised if they say, they wouldn't say goodbye to Goff, but they could say goodbye to Gurley. He did play like a little bit better down the stretch, but I think I could totally see where they might side. You know what? We're gonna go with Darrell Henderson, or we're gonna get someone else, and we're gonna move on from you just to free up some space and really go hard at other major free agents to really help Jared Goff, because I could totally see that happening.
Yeah. Rams.
Yeah. Not a good situation for them.
No. I mean, they're at least in the skill players, they have the pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen McVay put these pieces together before. It just didn't work out.
Yeah. Exactly.
It was I don't know, baby's first puzzle for McVay the past couple of years, and this year was IKEA. The directions he had to read.
Yeah, he's gonna have to figure out something this year. I mean, I don't think his job is necessarily at risk, but there is a feeling of, this roster was built to try to win a Super Bowl, and they did not get to the playoffs, so they gotta do something. They need to reconfigure something in order to get back there. So, that's the path for them.
All right, next up in the playoffs, we have the Philadelphia Eagles, the consolation prize of winning the NFC East. This team was injured all year, especially at their on their offense and at their receiving positions. I still felt really bad for Carson Wentz having to essentially miss the playoff game after on the first drive.
Yeah.
But there were problems with this team from the very beginning. Their receivers got injured a lot. The receivers, when they weren't injured, kept dropping passes. Aguilar had some injuries on defense. Their secondary was one of the easiest to throw on in the league for a while. It was a rough year for the Eagles. They still managed to win the division, but again, NFC East, kind of a consolation prize.
Yeah, that
Going
yeah.
going forward, like they really just need they need defensive back helps. I need to stop saying they need defensive back help, and they need wide receivers, and they need their wide receivers to not get injured.
Right. Well, I just think that I think they also need more reliable receivers as a whole. I don't think I don't think Carson Wentz is getting a lot of help from them. His old reliables have been the tight ends, and you can't have that. Like you need to have you need guys that could actually get open and guys that would be are able to catch the ball and run with it. And his receivers really let him down this year, so that's gonna be a big aspect. And like you said, secondary is gonna be a big thing. Their highlight of this team has been, offensive line kind of played iffy, but I think relatively they're solid, and their front seven, is consistently very good. And I think Carson Wentz put this team on his back in some tough situations and really won the games for them. But this is a massive moment for them. That how much more time is Doug Peterson going to get, and Carson Wentz going to get, to try to get this team back to the Super Bowl, because I think that's what they want to do.
Yeah, and it feels so weird just because you have a great coach, you have a great quarterback. It's just the circumstances around them aren't allowing them to win.
Yeah, I think the injuries are really one of the main things to blame, but there's gonna be a lot of people that feel like if they can't perform well 2 years in a row, then there's issues way beyond outside football god controlling means. So that's all going to be a major aspect of this offseason, is just making sure to beef up the roster as much as possible to go on a run and to protect Carson Wentz, or at least give more weapons to Carson Wentz moving forward. All right, the Buffalo Bills had made the playoffs this year. Second time in 3 years of Sean McDermott that they've made it, and you have a great defense that got them there. You have frisky offense a little bit. Josh Allen had his moments. Certainly Devin Singletary helped the cause a lot on that front. This is gonna be interesting though, because they do have a lot of guys that are hitting free agency and or being retired, or have retired rather, and I'm curious to see how they retool that defense a little bit. A lot of their stars are still there. Obviously, Tre'Davious White being the biggest name, and Ed Oliver, their rookie, who had a pretty decent year as well. This team was able to make it to the wild card round, and they almost won that game, and then Josh Allen sputtered into oblivion. But this Bills team is so... I think that there is a lot of hope around this team, that they're going to be able to maybe get a few more big time free agents, be able to draft some major players as well. They haven't traded away any of their picks right now, and they're in a decent position to keep on building on this roster and keep on getting to the point where they could win. I don't think many people thought they would make the playoffs this year, and they did. So they're just kind of working their way to try to get back there again in a AFC East that now looks a little bit more competitive.
It sure does, which is a weird thing to say about the AFC East.
Yeah.
I think I picked the Bills to beat the Patriots both times this year, and it almost happened.
In both situations, yeah.
Both situations. Like, if Josh Allen didn't get injured at the end of the first game, who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah. I really like the Bills' future. I think that with a couple more pieces, particularly wide receiver, another team that needs wide receiver help, they'll be able to really set things in place. Devin Singletary is going to be a fantastic running back in the NFL.
Yeah, no, for sure. He's on his way to really establishing himself even further next year. And I think it's going to help that Josh Allen, Devin Singletary 1-2 kind of punch. I think it can work out on the long haul for them, but I think that it would definitely help them to get more receiving threats, moving forward to really boost that offense even further. All right, next up.
Next up, the New England Patriots, who we are not talking about at the end, which is wonderful.
Yes.
Absolutely wonderful. Chris's curse, his lifelong dilemma, his baggage was removed this year when the Patriots lost in the playoffs.
All my baggage.
All your baggage, all your emotional baggage ever in life. And this was an interesting year for the Patriots. They went 12-4, which is a fantastic record. They won the division because duh. But you look at the games that they won versus the ones that they lost. They lost to all of the other division winners, so Texas, Kansas City, Baltimore. They beat all of their division opponents except for the Miami Dolphins in Week 17, when they needed to win to get that first round bye, which was wild. And then they beat all the other opponents, but all their other opponents it was the AFC North, who sucked this year, and it was the NFC East, who sucked this year.
Right.
They had an easy schedule, and anytime they actually had a viable opponent, they lost. They had trouble a lot of times this year. Their defense kept them in games. I'm totally shitting on the Patriots right now because I want to, but it was because of their defense. Their offense wasn't doing what they needed to do, and they had pass catching trouble all year, and that's going to be their biggest thing. And will Tom Brady be the quarterback? Tom Brady is definitely going to be the quarterback. I don't know why I'm asking that question. It's just speculation, and they want people to talk about it.
Right. Yeah, I don't. I think there's going to be a lot of wasted ink on this Tom Brady saga, because I think that he's going to come back. I think that they want to do a better job at getting him weapons, and I think that's going to be the big thing of the offseason, is getting him weapons to, add on to Julian Edelman, and add on to those guys that, could have a more breakout year. I could see. I think outside of Edelman, I don't think anyone's really safe. Maybe Burkhead. No. That's the only guy that I think really showed up in games this year.
James White's good.
James White. He's pretty good. But yeah, like the Sony Michel experiment kind of fell off this year, which was very
despite
weird.
How good he was in the playoffs last year.
Yeah, their first round draft pick, N'Keal Harry, just did not work out. Mohamed Sanu, that was a trade mid-season, thought that could work out. That did not. They did have a very short experiment with Mr. Antonio Brown. That did not work out. So that all these things that they tried to do for weapons just did not the job was not getting done, and so it's gonna be a lot of questions as to whether or not they're gonna be able to suffice and help him out on there. Because if he legit does not think that the Patriots can help him with that, if he has lost his faith in the organization and be able to build something around him, then regardless of the money that he's offered, I would be curious if he would just want to accept the challenge of going somewhere else. That I think is where that's the scenario I would see play out if Tom Brady was actually going to leave. I don't think he will, but that's the kind of the storyline that I think could go down for them.
If Tom Brady is gone, I say the Patriots do not win the AFC East.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, but it also depends on. I don't know, man, because which they don't have a lot of draft picks this year, but
no,
do
they spend it on a quarterback? Do they wait till next year and get Phillip Rivers to get there?
Do they trade do they trade their entire draft for Tua? I mean, this is what I mean. You don't know.
Yeah,
you don't know. Mm-hmm. I mean, and even if Tom Brady stays, do they do that? I mean, I don't think he would be happy about that.
Try to grab Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had a friend in college whose last name was Ebert.
Yeah. Justin Herbert, Jordan Love. Like, you have all these like lower quarterback tiers that might fall to the Patriots. So, I mean, that's possible. All you know is that they have a decent defense that probably could be better. I mean, considering how the season ended. Man, think about the Miami Dolphins had quite the impact on the NFL season, huh?
Sure did.
They had quite the impact on the Kansas City Chiefs.
The ultimate chaos team.
Yeah, they
The
are the
Miami
ones.
Dolphins.
They're the ones that picked the path.
Can we give out our start a Team Chaos award every year? Give an award to the team that provided the most chaos.
I mean,
because it was the Dolphins this year.
Yeah, it was the Dolphins for sure. Absolutely. That's what happens, man. When you're supposed to be the worst team in the league, whenever you win, oh yeah, baby, inject that chaos into me. Right there.
Yeah.
Next up,
all right.
The New Orleans.
Let's not talk about these fuckers anymore.
The New Orleans, send them away. New Orleans Saints. Yeah, a little surprising to talk about them this early, but they were ousted in an overtime game against the Vikings. Even though they had one of their best years, they had a pretty good year, you know, and another year where Drew Brees, he bounced back from injury and he was able to really play out and play really well. You know, Teddy Bridgewater, he broke a bunch of records too. Brees broke a bunch of records. And Teddy Bridgewater did a great job in relief of Drew Brees. And he also had Taysom Hill, which basically took over the playoff game as well. So all of those guys are going to be, I think all three of them are going to be free agents in some capacity. I think.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, so, or at least Hill is kind of like, he might be signed. I'm not entirely sure, but there's a quarterback decision to be made in New Orleans, and we don't know if Drew Brees is going to retire or if he is going to, you know, stick around. He has said that he is contemplating, or not like, he hasn't really said like a serious tone like that, but he's basically has said that he's evaluating his future at the moment. So you don't know where things are at right now, but this team has a pretty decent roster, and they have a few guys that they might need to re-sign, a few guys on the offensive line, you know, a few guys in the secondary maybe to re-sign. But overall, like, this is a team that is still built to contend, and I don't think that one season that they did fall short of their expectations big time, and we thought they could make it to the NFC Championship game. It did not work out that way, but I would not doubt this team. That I think they have a surefire shot at winning the division again. And and this is of course all with the context of that Drew Brees comes back. If Drew Brees doesn't come back, I think there's a little bit more hesitancy as to, you know, if they're going to be able to contend. But if he's back, I don't see why they could not get back there and go further next year.
Especially if they get like a number 2 wide receiver. Michael Thomas was great, but him and Jared Cook are you got to add another receiver.
Definitely. I'm with you on that. I think you need a guy with a lot more speed. I mean, I think Michael Thomas is a good, you know, catching threat, kind of like a, you know how like Julio Jones is like the guy, you know, he just catches the ball, but he's not like the speedster. Like, that's Michael Thomas, even though Michael Thomas I think is a little bit more faster. You need a fast guy though. You need a guy that could just catch it and just run. You kind of had that in past years. Oh God, I'm gonna forget his name. Long Ted Ginn Jr. Like, he was there for a while. He was like their speed guy. They need someone like that again. So that's gonna be a big factor as well. On that front. So Saints, pretty much, you know, go into the season, get a few more guys, get your quarterbacks back. You should be good to go.
Yep. Next up, the Vikings had a surprising playoff win. Were a little weird to start the season, but really became consistent as the season went on. Kirk Cousins started to shake the haters. He played well as the season went on. the defense wasn't quite what you wanted it to be, knowing Minnesota, but Dalvin Cook had an outstanding year. This offense is pretty much going to be the same with Cousins, Cook, Thielen, Diggs, Rudolph, and it's going to get better. The offensive coordinator just left to go get a head coaching job, but Kubiak took over.
Yeah.
Yes, who is going to do a great job. Yeah. It'll be weird to see what the Vikings do, but they have kind of like their key players set. I think beef up the defense a little bit, and they'll definitely be contenders for next year.
Yeah, Gary Kubiak is one of the better offensive minds in the league, and a lot of people thought he was going to retire for good after he stepped down as the Broncos head coach, but he has constantly, like when he was with the Texans, and when he was just a coordinator with the Ravens. Was it the Ravens? Maybe wrong about that. But it was the Ravens. He's had he's one of the more innovative coaches out there, and he's going to serve this team well, I think, and it's going to help this offense really break out even more. And I would imagine that you're going to see a lot of Dalvin Cook, work. I think that he's going to definitely still be a major aspect of it, but yeah, they're going to need to rely on their two wide receivers. Which, by the way, I mean, I think there is some rumors that Diggs could be traded. There is a possibility of that, and you never know. But that I would think that they would want to try to keep as many weapons as possible. Along with their two tight ends with Kyle Rudolph and Irv Smith as well. So. See what happens on that front. And yeah, like you said, like this team was pretty good this year, and like every single year you go with the Vikings, at least lately, you go into the year thinking that they're going to be pretty good, and there's times where they disappoint, but like this defense still on paper looks pretty decent. Like there's not like many changes happening there, so I don't know. Like I think that they're in good shape. So. Yeah, we'll see how it ends up playing out. Next up, the Houston Texans nearly... I mean, if they held on to that lead, what a different world we'd be living in right now in that Kansas City Chiefs game. But nonetheless, the Texans now go into the offseason with... definitely some questions on the defensive front because, J.J. Watt, he's going to recover, and he did recover from his shoulder injury, or the pec injury, rather, that ultimately he was able to play again. But there is a lot of questions on this defense. Ever since getting rid of Clowney, the team just hasn't been the same on defense. It's been one of the worst run defenses in the league. They need a big-time player there, and their passing defense hasn't been that great either. That needs to be worked on. But other than that, they're still pretty much loaded on the offensive front. Carlos Hyde is free agent, so that's something that might be looked into, but they have a plethora of wide receivers. They need a tight end, probably, but the offense you feel pretty good about. It's the defense that's the concern.
Absolutely. You can't just rely on Watt and Merciless. Getting rid of Clowney is not an easy hole to fill. And defense, kind of like you said, is going to be the top priority. And also beefing up the offensive line even more to protect Watson. Laremy Tunsil was good. You got to re-sign him and then get some more help on top of that.
Yeah, I think that we'll see. This is the first year that Bill O'Brien is actually taking on the head coach GM role. Essentially, now he's officially taking it over. So we'll see how he ends up molding this roster, because this is literally this team is his oyster, and a lot of people wanted him fired after the Chiefs game. So if he screws this up, I don't know if he's gonna be back another year after this. So we'll see. We'll try to do some speed running through the rest of these now. The Seahawks... you go first with the Seattle Seahawks.
Seattle Seahawks had a great season, were one of the best teams, and then injury happened at the end of the year, particularly at running back, which caused Marshawn Lynch to come back. They'll be okay at running back next year, but they gotta help with their defense to help make that good again, and do something to help Russell Wilson, because Russell Wilson really carried the team this year. And I think going forward with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett at wide receiver, the team as a whole is going to be in a good place. I feel like there are a few other big names beyond Russell Wilson away from like being extreme contenders. Like there aren't huge names like Russell Wilson on this team that could bring this team up to the next level.
Right, absolutely. I can see where they maybe I think they're going to really try to rely on Chris Carson, because Rashad Penny he had a better year, but I think that they might try to trade him somewhere else at this point, because
Chris Carson should be the focus.
Yeah, I don't see him really breaking out. But yeah, I think the defense in its current state is pretty good. Jadeveon Clowney is going to be a big question, though. We'll see if they end up re-signing him or if he ends up going somewhere else. Ansah, didn't have the best year, but also up for potentially being re-signed. Could help them in some ways. Offensive line, a lot of offensive line signage, potentially, and that might be turned over a little bit. So we'll see on that. Jerron Reed also up for free agency. So they got a lot of work to do to kind of keep this roster afloat. But they still have two of the best linebackers in the league, Bobby Wagner, KJ Wright, and they still got a lot of young talent that's kind of developing and growing. So the Seahawks team, you have faith in them that they're going to continue to be successful.
Yep.
Baltimore Ravens. This is the team that should have been in the Super Bowl potentially. They were the number 1 seed, and they blew it against the Titans. And a lot of people want to hate on Lamar Jackson, but he has the MVP, the first unanimous MVP since Tom Brady, and only the second one of all time, which is an incredible feat. The Ravens made a great video after Lamar Jackson was announced, made me cry. But Lamar Jackson is going to be the guy for years to come for this organization. They're going to continue to build around him. I think the big question is, I think they needed better defense in some ways. I think that they need the ability to stop these big play offenses, which they have trouble with that with Kansas City. They had trouble with that with Tennessee. They need to build a little bit of more talent on that front. And most importantly, they need more weapons for Lamar Jackson. I think those are the two focuses for this offseason for the Ravens.
Make the whole offense tight ends. That's the answer, because Russell Wilson throws to the tight end a lot. Lamar Jackson throws to the tight end a lot.
Yeah.
And like they can guard and they can pass. It's perfect.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect. Totally. You don't need that speed of a wide receiver. Absolutely not.
No, but add Marquise Brown's gonna be good. Add another wide receiver and then beef up the defense. That's what the Ravens need.
Definitely.
But it's such a small need because of how good they were last year.
They are such a good team. They're gonna be a Super Bowl contender next year. Absolutely. I think this is just things that they need to keep in mind. But overall, this team is in really, really good shape. Big question, I think, too. Marshall Yanda, their longtime offensive guard. I'm curious to see if he ends up retiring. That's something to watch this offseason as well. All right, next up. Tennessee.
Next up, the Tennessee Titans blew everyone away this year. Had such a late surge, especially once Ryan Tannehill took over. He really revitalized this team, and if they don't re-sign him to their full-time quarterback deal and Derrick Henry, they are idiots. Yeah. These two need to be the focal point of the most important priority in this offseason is just sign them. With new players, get that defense better. You got the offense now. Get the defense good.
Yeah. What's the deal with the defense?
What's the deal with the defense? I don't know why my voice was cracking so much.
It's basically Jerry Seinfeld. Right. I think Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry, I understand you don't want to overvalue these guys and overpay them, and then they end up falling apart. But don't overthink it. These are the two guys that really helped you get to the cusp of the Super Bowl, and
it worked.
It worked.
Go with what works.
Go with it, and if it fails, it fails, and it happens, and people will criticize you, and you'll probably get fired. But I think it's worth the risk. It's worth the risk considering how well the two played. And like you said, I think the big thing is going to be the front seven needs to be worked on a lot. Like Jarrell Casey's great. You have Harold Landry who played great, Rashad Evans who played great, but you need more players in that front that can develop the pressure and keep, again, it's another defense that needs to get better at, like, well, I don't know. They need to get better at not giving up the big play, but then they kind of, against the Ravens, they were able to kind of squander that. But I think that there needs to be like a little bit more talent there, and get a few more weapons. I think AJ Brown is great right now, but you might want to just see about another wide receiver. Not that Corey Davis and Adam Humphries and all these guys, they could work, but just maybe invest in something else there. Maybe a second tight end as well, along with John Smith, because I don't know where Delaney Walker. I don't know if Delaney Walker's going to stick around. That's a big question.
No, I doubt it.
So that's all up for grabs. But yes, absolutely, those two players, sign them back, please. For the love of God, make this Titans team interesting to watch.
Please.
The Green Bay Packers had a year where like no one thought they were good, but they made it to the NFC Championship game. And they are, I think the big question is that once again, one of the things that held this team back was that they just did not have another guy next to Devontae Adams where Aaron Rodgers could reliably throw to on a consistent basis. And that, I think, was what hurt them, because the Niners were able to shut down Adams, and they also didn't use Jones enough, which that was a coaching thing. But still, like, that was a big time player that could have been used a lot better in this offense, and I think will get consideration, to continue to be used and hopefully be used better.
Yeah.
And in all fronts, the defense, you have the two Smiths who are playing well and are doing well, and no question about that. And you have Kenny Clark, who's a very good player on the defensive line. You need more work on the secondary, though, which is a constant struggle for this team. They cannot find a right guy in the secondary. Jair Alexander had a good year. I don't think certainly he's a first round draft pick, so he's not going to be like going anywhere. But there needs more help all around on that front, and offensive line is also going to be looked at. Bulaga is a free agent, so. A lot of questions for Green Bay.
Mm-hmm. I am curious. I'm curious how this is going to go next year. What the Bears are going to do. What the Vikings are going to do. The Lions are going to fuck off at the bottom of a hole because Matt Patricia is their coach. But
it's going to be like the kid that fucked the sectional couch.
What?
The Lions are going to be that kid that fucked the sectional couch.
Exactly. So, like, you don't know what's going to happen with the rest of the division. Like, everyone thought the Bears were going to win again this year. They didn't. Before that, probably the Vikings. They didn't. The Bears won. So it's up in the air. You don't know what the consistency in this division is going to be year to year. It may seem like the Packers are on top now. Could be the Vikings next year. Could be the Bears. It's not going to be the Lions. Play this clip when the Lions win the division next year.
Yes. Yeah, well, I don't even know if I'll remember, but,
Yep.
Probably. Yeah, that is going to be, it's kind of like the three-man division race at this point. It's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out on that front. All right, what about our Super Bowl teams?
Our Super Bowl teams, we begin the Super Bowl teams with the 49ers. What more is there to say? They were fantastic this year. One of the most dominant teams on both offense and defense. Any free agents, which looks like Jimmy Ward and Richard Sherman, both free agents?
Oh, Richard Sherman's not a free agent. He's signed. Arik Armstead's probably the biggest on the defensive line.
Yeah, so just getting the defensive line worked out. There's not a lot just because of how Kyle Shanahan coaches. He can make anyone into a good running back.
Yeah, Emmanuel Sanders too is also a free agent, but yeah, you're
so
right.
Make sure that Garoppolo has good receivers. Deebo Samuel had a really good rookie year, so he's going to be solid going into next year. Are you going to keep Emmanuel Sanders, or are you going to get someone else in free agency? It'll be interesting, but I think that the 49ers is especially with just how dominant they were this year, are going to be able to maintain this momentum going forward.
Yeah, I'm curious about Joe Staley, the longtime offensive lineman. I don't, he's 35 at this point, and I don't know. He's still playing well, but I do wonder if he might consider retirement or not. So that's something to watch. I'm all up on the offensive lineman retirements, of course. But no, this team for the most part, mostly everyone is returning except for the few names that we mentioned, and those are decent names, big names, but like every big star on this team is basically returning next year, and like we said earlier, the coaches are coming back as well. So this team should be good, and they're going to be good, and they're going to be hard to beat. And so it'll be interesting to see if any of the NFC West is going to be able to have a response to that next division or next year.
Next year,
yeah. So definitely, I think. Forgive me, I don't know if you feel like this, but I feel like the NFC West is the deepest division for next year.
Absolutely.
Because I think you could make.
They're the only division that we had 3 teams that we talked about today.
Yeah, and I think the Cardinals have a decent shot.
Well, no, the NFC North did, but Cardinals. Yes. Yeah, Cardinals are going to improve, and they're still at the bottom.
Yeah,
but they're going to improve. The Rams, it's Sean McVay, and then the Seahawks and 49ers were just so dominant this season. So
yeah, exactly.
Going forward, there's could be some fluctuation, but overall, this is a very deep division.
Absolutely. And last but not least, the Kansas City Chiefs, Super Bowl winners. They do actually have a few questions going into this offseason. Especially when you're considering Chris Jones, one of their best defensive players, is going to be a free agent. You also want to look into paying a guy like Patrick Mahomes, and you might have other big contracts coming your way as well. So there is going to be a lot of questions, going into next season, going into the offseason about who they want to keep. And who they won't. I mean, obviously Patrick Mahomes, he's not a free agent, but they're definitely gonna figure out a way to pay him. So it's then figuring out how, from there, how you deal with the roster implications of an extension like that, who you're able to keep around and who you're not. But there is with Chris Jones, I think that's like the biggest name that's going to free agency right now. I don't think that there was anyone huge outside of that. Because I think most of the other guys are signed at least for another year. But they're gonna, with the amount of free agents they have, which they do have a lot, they're going to need to get depth again in the secondary, especially, but of course in the front seven as well. Their linebackers had an on and off year. Definitely want to get some guys for that as well.
Yeah. A lot of holes to fill, but they still have Mahomes. They still have their great offense, and they just won a Super Bowl. So you can't do much more than what you did this year.
No, yeah. I mean, it's now it's going to be like, how much will this hangover, potential Super Bowl hang over their head, quite literally. Or will they be able just to bounce right back, which they may. I mean, just considering who is currently on the roster, who is at least safe for the year, there's definitely a shot, and they're definitely going to be. I think they're obviously going to be a great team next year. They're favored to win the Super Bowl. We'll see what they do. So something to watch at least. So there you go, and there is your 32 team recap that went on for probably combined like 3 hours.
Yeah, we talk a lot.
Talk a lot about a lot of this. Before we close out, we do want to talk about some things heading forward into the next phase, I guess, of Virtual Ball Boys, because there's no more weekly games happening. So we are going to take a break next week. We're not going to have an episode, but the following week we'll be back. And the goal, and I don't want to promise that this is going to be a consistent thing, but our goal would be to have a podcast every other week, talk about all the latest in the off-season storylines, any major developing news that happens, and of course we'll have, various fun segments that we'll include along the way. I definitely want to, keep the virtual in the Ball Boys, if that makes any sense. So we definitely want to, keep on, talking about nerd culture and video games and and things like that. We want to keep that as a forefront in the podcast. Not to close out any of those guys. I know we didn't really focus on it in this podcast, but there's just a lot that we wanted to wrap up football-wise. And we'll have the time to do that, luckily. I know that there is an idea that I had in mind, I know that we've talked about, we might basically after the draft maybe go on a hiatus maybe for a few months as the season kind of comes together. But in that time frame, I was also thinking of doing a Virtual Ball Boys themed table party episode. I feel like that would be a lot of fun. With whatever context we want, if we want to return to the Smash world or whatever, something along those lines, that could be a lot of fun. So there's a lot of ideas that I have in terms of just general skits and fun fun little games to include in the podcast going forward. I don't know. Do you have anything that is on the top of your mind that you would love to talk about for this podcast?
There is, absolutely, and it ties into football and it ties into virtual. But I'll talk to you about it off the podcast.
Oh, you're teasing them. You're teasing the audience here.
Yep, sure am.
Damn.
But
wow.
It should be a lot of fun.
Okay, so we will. We'll keep you on top of that. We didn't have time to really do it, but just real quick, boldest prediction that you can think about for the off season.
Tom Brady to the Raiders.
Okay. I say there will be a quarterback for quarterback trade for the first time since 2014. I don't know in what context, but there will be a quarterback for quarterback trade in the offseason. So that'll be my bold prediction I throw out there. With that all said, thank you all for a fantastic season, and we are looking forward to many more to come and a fun off season ahead with a lot of discussion about who the hell is gonna be back here next February.
Yep.
With all that being said, we will see you in 2 weeks.
Good night and good ball.
Oh.
Virtual Ball Boys has been brought to you by Team Chaos Productions. Find us on Twitter at Virtual Ball Boys and find more of our work at Team Chaos Pods.